Alright, so now we got to copy this detail from the original house. It's pretty simple. It's just a 4x6. Of course, it would be an original 4x6, so it's going to be pretty much an actual 4x6. But that part is not so big. So this is what's left off of where they notched it. We have 25 inches overall and 24 to here. So we want to measure 25 inches, and we want to measure 1 inch. And I am pretty sure that this is a 45, but we will check. The other thing is this is also needs to tie back into the main house. And so what we will need to do is we're going to use it as the remainder of this length is going to be the second top plate. So it'll create the double top plate. So, need a square. And then we'll use a level to mark that, but I'm just going to real quick go ahead and transfer this 1 inch. We will need this all the way around. The others we don't need it to go all the way around because we have our nice big timber frame saw, so we can make that in one cut. But this is a detail. We don't want to cut all the way through. We're just wanting to bevel it all the way around to create this nice little design. Which, like I say, it looks like it's just a 45. Tyler's brought me my angle finder, so and now we transferred that measurement all the way around, so we can go ahead and lay it back down. Now, the angle finder is only going to be so good for us right now. It'll get us fairly close. The reason it won't be necessarily dead on is because they have so many layers of paint on here and chips and everything that we can only get a basic idea. But it's going to go on the end of a house away from all of the corners, so if it's slightly off, it's not going to matter from that. Nobody will ever be able to tell, but we want to get it as close as we possibly can. Again, we'll be able to get it pretty close. Looks like my it's been bent slightly. So we'll be able to get it pretty close just by doing this. And we can basically just, to figure out what that angle is, this mark we will not cut. We're just putting it here so that we can use our square to figure out what the angle is. There's multiple ways. One, this is already a 45. So with assuming it's being a 45, that's the first thing I'm going to try. It is slightly off. So instead we have to use our angles and our degrees. So we got our pivot point here, and we've got our degrees all down through here, which will tell us what this angle is. So all you got to do is line that up right on that pivot point, line it up with that line that you've got made, and it's going to tell us that this is what it's showing is about a 42.5 to 42 3/4. It's really difficult to tell. It's kind of right in between the 42 and 43. So chances are it was beveled at a 45, and just with all that paint you lost a degree or two, because you know you can see where it is majorly caked right here in spots. Here's pretty clean, but then there's not enough of an angle here, and then you got a big glob of paint right there, a big glob of paint here. Here's it's smoother up here, but then there's a big glob at the front, which is going to bring that angle up some. This is roughly where I measured it, and that glob right there is probably turned a 45 into a 42.5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it with 45 because that's a standard number. Usually back then they used pretty standardized measurements. They weren't going to have a saw that was going to sit there and have all the little, you know, the little bitty marks to give them a 42.5. They would have probably gone for either a 40, 45, pretty standardized. Some of those saws only are going to show you an actual mark for every 10 degrees or so. So, and 45 is standard. So, my guess is they did do 45. It's just between swelling and the painting, it throws it off. So, we're going to go with a 45. It should give us this nice little look. So, we'll see. But again, the other thing we got to do is we got to use our level. We'll mark this real quick. And then we will have to rip down through here, cut up this way, basically just notch all of this material out. This is only going to support a fly rafter out here, and it will be cantilevered. The way that it will gain its support is you're going to have all this 3-foot length here, which is going to help counter that weight out this way, which most people are not going to walk on a roof at all. If you're on a roof, usually you're going to be a roofer, and they know you don't put a lot of weight out here on the fly rafter anyway. You stay away from that unless you're having to work right there. But also, you've got this whole thing right here, which are going to have rafters sitting on it as well. The whole roof's going to be coming down, bearing on top of this, adding extra weight here every 16 inches. And then this square cut here is going to sit right against the wall. So it's not going to be able to kick like this at all, because between this being nailed down all the way here and the wall being right here, and the wall being right here at this point, it's not going to allow it to kick. So that is going to add the added support out here, even with this material being removed. If we removed it all the way and simply screwed it into the side, then this would not be supported. It wouldn't have this added support here. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to mark this real quick, and then we'll start cutting it. Breaker. So what y'all would have seen right there is the fact that it kept binding the saw down. The reason is, if you look at this grain, you'll see how close the grain is on this side and the way it starts curving in towards this wide grain in the middle where it's really, really wide. What that does is, as I take out material, this is trying to curve back in and reconnect, pretty much, is what's happening. So it's binding on that blade. So that's where you just back up, and on the side that you're not trying to save, take out just another little blade. Let it fall to the ground, you know, about a blade more, and slowly work your way back in. You could always use them for shims later if you wanted, but it just takes out just a little more, and then you notice it went real good. And then right here where this thing starts to curve back in again, that's when it started binding up again. So that's where I again had to come back and do the same thing. But that's all you got to do. If you're having an issue like that where it just keeps binding the saw down, a lot of times, especially when you're ripping, it's usually not going to happen as much when you're cutting. When you're doing a cross cut, in general, if it's binding, that has more to do with you not supporting the other end well. But if it's when you're on a rip, you need to just take a little more out of one side. If the saw is big enough or something, you may be able to wedge something back here to keep it open. But with that big saw, I would not advise doing that, because if it was to possibly kick back and hit that piece, it's going to throw that saw who knows where. Possibly on your leg, your arm, your hand, anything like that. So, but that's all you got to do to fix that. So, and then we'll just cut this with the Sawzall. Alright, so now we're just going to do that one more time. I might just go ahead and do it 3 times. We will need it for on the other end of the porch as well, but I am not sure. We might just do that whenever the time comes.